archaeologists are using this new superpower to unearth treasures on the ground.
We are starting to get information from all kinds of places where we knew absolutely nothing.
For more than 25 years, one discovery beneath the Caribbean Sea has disturbed the small group of researchers who witnessed it. In 2001, a marine survey team scanning waters near Cuba detected enormous geometric formations nearly 2,000 feet below the surface. Sonar images revealed pyramid-like structures, straight pathways arranged with unusual symmetry. Experts studying the scans admitted the site resembled the ruins of a lost city. But there was one terrifying problem. At that depth, the structures would have sunk beneath the ocean thousands of years before known civilization was believed to exist. Then, the investigation suddenly vanished from public view. Now, new scans of the site reportedly reveal formations even larger and more complex, reopening one of history's most unsettling underwater mysteries. The accidental discovery that changed everything. Some discoveries happen because people spend years searching for them. Others happen completely by accident. In 2001, a routine mission in the waters off western Cuba suddenly turned into one of the most controversial underwater mysteries of the modern era. What began as a simple search for old shipwrecks ended with sonar images that appeared to show something almost impossible. Giant geometric structures resting deep beneath the ocean floor, arranged in patterns that looked disturbingly similar to an ancient city. And for a brief moment, the entire world wondered the same thing. Has someone just found Atlantis? The discovery happened near Cuba's Guanahatabibes Peninsula, a remote region at the western tip of the island surrounded by deep Caribbean waters. A Canadian company called Advanced Digital Communications, better known as ADC, had been working in partnership with the Cuban government to scan the seafloor in search of Spanish shipwrecks. It was not an unusual mission. For centuries, Spanish treasure fleets crossed the Caribbean carrying gold, silver, and priceless cargo back to Europe. Many of those ships never made it home. Storms, reefs, pirates, and naval battles sent countless vessels to the bottom of the sea. Finding even one wreck could mean uncovering an extraordinary piece of history. To search the area, ADC used side-scan sonar equipment, a technology that sends sound waves across the ocean floor to create detailed images of what lies below. Normally, the scans reveal natural formations, debris, or the outline of sunken ships. But during one particular scan, the operators noticed something that did not resemble a ship at all. The sonar images showed enormous geometric shapes spread across roughly 2 square kilometers of seabed. Massive stone-like blocks appeared arranged in symmetrical formations. Some looked stacked on top of one another. Others formed circular patterns. Several shapes rising from the ocean floor appeared strikingly similar to pyramids. The people leading the mission were marine engineer Paulina Zalitsky and her husband, Paul Weinsweig. Both were experienced professionals, not sensationalists looking for publicity. Yet even they were stunned by what appeared on the screens in front of them. Weinsweig later described the formations as resembling megalithic structures like those found at Stonehenge or Easter Island. According to reports at the time, some of the structures measured as much as 400 meters wide and 40 meters high. These were not tiny fragments scattered across the seabed. Whatever the sonar had detected appeared enormous, organized, and strangely deliberate. Zalitsky called it a truly remarkable structure and said it looked as though it could have been a large urban center. But she also issued an immediate warning against jumping to conclusions. She insisted it would be totally irresponsible to identify the site without stronger evidence. That caution mattered. These were serious researchers with technical expertise. They were not claiming to have discovered Atlantis. In fact, they were among the first people urging everyone to slow down and investigate carefully before making extraordinary claims. But the world had already made up its mind. Within days, headlines exploded across international media. Atlantis found in Cuba. Lost underwater city discovered. Television networks, newspapers, and magazines rushed to cover the story. Scientists were contacted. Governments became interested. The Cuban government, already involved in the survey project, reportedly took the discovery very seriously. National Geographic expressed interest in further investigation, and for a short time, it felt as though humanity stood on the edge of solving one of history's greatest mysteries. Then something strange happened. Almost as quickly as the story captured the world's imagination, it vanished into silence. What the sonar actually showed. Before we get to why the story disappeared, let's talk about what exactly was found. When the ADC team went back to the site in July 2001, they brought a remotely operated vehicle, basically an underwater robot with cameras. Cuban geologist Manuel Iturralde, a senior researcher at the Natural History Museum of Cuba, came along. This was a serious scientific follow-up, not a publicity stunt. What the robot camera captured confirmed what the sonar had suggested. There were smooth, flat blocks of stone on the seafloor. The blocks had clean edges. Some appeared to be stacked deliberately. The geometric shapes, the pyramids, the circular formations, the linear arrangements did not look random. Iturralde, who had spent years studying underwater rock formations, admitted these are extremely peculiar structures. He told the Washington Post, "It's strange, it's weird. They've never seen something like this before, and we don't have an explanation for it." Those are not the words of someone who thinks they're looking at a natural rock formation. The stones brought up from the site told another important story. Analysis of the volcanic rocks revealed that they had once been above the water level. They hadn't always been sitting at the bottom of the sea. Something had put them there. Either the sea rose dramatically, or the land had sunk, or both. The structures covered roughly 2 square kilometers of the seafloor. They sat on a plateau that forms the bottom of what appears to be an old mud volcano, and they were right along a geological fault line, a place where the Earth's crust is cracked and has been known to shift. Interestingly, Weinsweig pointed out that ancient civilizations throughout history tended to build near volcanoes because the volcanic soil is incredibly fertile. So the location itself, near a volcanic feature, along a fault line, isn't necessarily strange for a settlement. It's actually a pattern we see with ancient peoples all around the world. But here is the problem that stumped everyone. The structures are sitting 650 meters, over 2,000 feet, below the surface of the Caribbean Sea. For land to have once been at that depth and have people living on it building cities, the sea level would have had to be dramatically lower than it is today. And when scientists ran the math on that, the numbers were deeply disturbing. The timeline problem that breaks history. This is the part of the mystery where the excitement turns into a serious scientific problem. Because once researchers started calculating the depth, the age, and the geological reality of the site, they ran headfirst into something that simply did not fit the history books. And even today, nobody has a clean explanation for it. The structures discovered off the coast of Cuba were sitting at a depth of more than 2,000 feet below the surface of the ocean. That single detail changed everything. Because if those formations were ever part of a city built by human beings, then they would have originally needed to exist above sea level, on dry land where people could actually live, build, and move around. But according to everything scientists know about Earth's history, the ocean was never supposed to be that low. During the last ice age, massive glaciers covered huge parts of the planet. Because so much water was trapped in ice, sea levels around the world dropped dramatically. Entire coastlines looked completely different. Land bridges connected places that are now separated by water. Humans and animals crossed regions that today lie underwater. But here is the problem that made geologists deeply uncomfortable. Even during the Pleistocene era, at the absolute lowest sea levels, scientists have been able to confirm the ocean only dropped by about 120 meters, or roughly 400 feet. 400 feet is significant. Entire ancient settlements around the world now sit underwater because of those post-Ice Age sea level changes. But the Cuban structures were not 400 feet underwater. They were sitting at depths approaching 2,000 feet. That leaves an enormous gap that science struggles to explain. If the ocean never receded far enough to expose that land naturally, then researchers were left with only 2 possibilities. Either the formations were not man-made at all and were simply unusual geological structures, or the land itself somehow sank thousands of feet beneath the ocean. That second possibility opened another disturbing question. How long would it actually take for land to sink that far through natural geological activity? Geologist Manuel Iturralde attempted to answer that question, and his estimate stunned people following the story. According to him, for the site to descend naturally to that depth could have taken as long as 50,000 years, and that is where the timeline completely falls apart. 50,000 years ago, according to mainstream archaeology, there were no advanced civilizations building pyramid-shaped monuments anywhere in the Americas. In fact, the dominant scientific view says humans may not even have arrived in the region yet. There were no known cities, no massive stone architecture, no organized urban centers existing in Cuba at that time. Not even close. The implication was impossible to ignore. If the structures were genuinely artificial, they would force historians to rethink everything they believed about early human civilization in the New World. That possibility made many experts extremely cautious. Michael Faught, an underwater archaeology expert from Florida State University, addressed the claims directly. He admitted that if the structures were truly man-made, they would represent something incredibly advanced for that time period. He described the formations as being out of time and out of place. That phrase stayed with people because it perfectly captured the mystery. The site did not fit comfortably into any accepted historical timeline. And yet, according to the sonar scans and the limited images that were released, something unusual was clearly sitting on the ocean floor. Not everyone believed the structures were artificial, however. Many scientists argued there were perfectly natural explanations. The region around the Guanahatabibes Peninsula is known for karst geology, a limestone landscape capable of producing strange angular formations. Cuba also sits in a seismically active area where earthquakes, shifting fault lines, and underwater landslides constantly reshape the seafloor. Some geologists pointed to basalt, a volcanic rock that can naturally fracture into geometric-looking columns and blocks. Nature, under the right conditions, can sometimes create formations that appear surprisingly man-made. So the scientific community split into two camps. One side saw a fascinating but natural geological phenomenon. The other saw formations that looked too symmetrical, too organized, and too deliberate to dismiss so easily. And everyone agreed on one thing. The only way to solve the mystery was through deeper investigation and more exploration. But somehow, that exploration never truly happened, and that silence became one of the strangest parts of the entire story. Why did the investigation stop? The discovery was made in Cuban territorial waters. In 2001, the political relationship between Cuba and the United States was frozen solid. The U.S. trade embargo against Cuba had been in place for decades. American researchers, American institutions, and American funding could not easily get involved with something in Cuban waters without stepping into a political minefield. A DC was a Canadian-Cuban joint venture. They had a deal with Fidel Castro's government to explore Cuban waters for shipwrecks. That deal gave them access, but it also meant they were operating under enormous political scrutiny from multiple directions. Every move they made was watched. When the discovery became international news, it attracted exactly the kind of attention that makes governments nervous. The Cuban government was interested, but a project of this scale, requiring deep-sea submersibles, international scientists, and massive funding, needed cooperation from entities that were politically blocked. Then there was the funding problem. Deep-sea exploration is extraordinarily expensive. The equipment needed to do a proper archaeological investigation at 650 meters, not just sonar scans, but actual sample collection, 3D mapping, artifact recovery, costs millions of dollars. A DC was a private company with limited resources. Zalitsky and Weinsweig appealed to institutions and governments for support. The support largely never came. National Geographic reportedly showed interest, but ultimately never mounted an expedition. The Cuban government was supportive, but couldn't finance a mission of that scale alone. And the international scientific community, cautious by nature, skeptical of spectacular claims, and unwilling to risk their reputations on something that could turn out to be natural rock, stayed on the sidelines. Then, something quieter happened. The story simply fell off the radar. No dramatic suppression, just the slow, grinding bureaucracy of politics, money, and academic caution swallowing a discovery that should have been front-page news for years. Zalitsky eventually retired from deep-sea work. The original ADC data sat largely unexamined, and for 2 decades, the pyramids, or whatever they are, sat at the bottom of the Caribbean Sea, waiting. He-Maya connection. Nobody is talking about. Zalitsky herself proposed a theory that has been largely overlooked in the sensationalist coverage of this discovery. She suggested that the stone features might be the remnants of a local culture that once lived on a land bridge, a stretch of land, roughly 100 miles long, that once connected Cuba to Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula when sea levels were lower. That's not a fringe idea. Geologists have hypothesized for years that Cuba and the Yucatan Peninsula were once connected by resembled. And here's what makes this connection electric. The Yucatan Peninsula is where the ancient Maya lived. The Maya built pyramids. They built cities. They built circular astronomical observatories. They arranged stones with extraordinary precision. And the ancient Maya had legends, oral traditions passed down through generations that spoke of ancestors who once lived on an island in the Gulf of Mexico that was swallowed by the sea in a sudden, catastrophic event. Manuel Iturralde noted this directly. The Maya and the native Yucatecos people had stories of a sunken homeland. Their ancestors, according to their own accounts, were survivors of a civilization that went under the waves. Now consider the timeline of early people in the Caribbean. Scientists studying the ancient migration routes of the Americas believe that the earliest settlers of Cuba, a group called the Casimoiroid Indians, arrived from the Yucatan Peninsula around 4000 BC. That's 6,000 years ago. And 6,000 years is the same number that keeps showing up in estimates of how old the Cuban underwater structures might be, if they were built when sea levels were lower, but not impossibly so. This is not proof of anything, but it opens a new door. What if the underwater structures off Cuba aren't 50,000 years old, the number geologists cite for complete geological subsidence? What if the land in this specific area sank faster than the model predicts? Through tectonic activity along the fault line the structures sit on. The structures lie directly on a geological fault. Fault-related subsidence can be rapid and dramatic. An earthquake-triggered collapse could have sent a coastal settlement plunging far deeper than gradual sea level rise would account for. That scenario, a land bridge culture, possibly connected to Proto-Maya peoples, building along a volcanic fault line whose settlements were swallowed by a sudden catastrophic geological event, is haunting, and it fits the Maya legends almost exactly. What modern rescanning revealed. 25 years after the original discovery, researchers have returned to the site with tools that didn't exist in 2001. Modern multi-beam sonar can produce three-dimensional images of the seafloor with extraordinary detail, far beyond what the original side-scan sonar captured. Autonomous underwater vehicles, or AUVs, can dive to extreme depths without a human pilot and stay down far longer than an ROV on a cable. And satellite-based depth mapping has allowed researchers to remotely analyze the area from above. What the new data shows is both clarifying and more unsettling than the original findings. The three-dimensional mapping has confirmed that the geometric shapes are real. The structures are not sonar artifacts, distortions caused by equipment errors or interpretation mistakes. The pyramid-like forms, the linear arrangements, the circular platforms, they exist on the seafloor as physical structures with measurable dimensions. The rescanning has also revealed something the original sonar missed. There appear to be more structures than previously identified, extending beyond the original 2-square-kilometer survey area. The site may be significantly larger than initially reported. The depth measurements, taken with greater precision, place the structures between 600 and 750 meters below sea level, consistent with the original findings, but confirming that the entire site has a complex, varied topography. It's not a flat plain with a few odd rocks. It's a landscape with hills, platforms, and what look like planned elevations. What the rescanning cannot definitively answer, and this is the honest truth, is whether these structures are man-made or natural. That question can only be answered by physically going down there, collecting samples, and having geologists and archaeologists analyze them in a laboratory. Remote sensing, no matter how sophisticated, cannot tell us if a hand ever touched those stones. But what it has done is rule out one of the main skeptical arguments. For years, some scientists said the original sonar images were too blurry and low resolution to make any real conclusions from. The new data is not blurry. The new data is sharp, detailed, and consistent. And what it shows is a site that demands a real, funded, organized scientific expedition. What science says now, and what it refuses to say. The scientific establishment in 2025 is in a frustrating place on this topic. On one hand, researchers who study underwater geology freely admit that the Cuban seafloor formations are genuinely unusual. They're not dismissing the site. The volcanic rock samples recovered in 2001, rock that was once above sea level, remains a data point that nobody has cleanly explained away. On the other hand, without a full archaeological expedition, no credentialed scientist will stake their reputation on calling these structures man-made. The professional cost of being wrong about something this significant is enormous. If you go on record saying humans built pyramids in the Caribbean 6,000 or more years ago, and then it turns out to be natural geology, your career may never recover. So what we have is a quiet standoff. The scientists most qualified to investigate the site won't commit to what they think it is. The people most willing to make bold claims, YouTube channels, independent researchers, ancient mystery writers, don't have the credentials or equipment to actually investigate it properly. There is one intriguing piece of evidence that keeps getting mentioned by serious researchers: the regularity and smoothness of the stone surfaces. Natural basalt can fracture into columns. Natural karst limestone can erode into angular shapes. But the specific combination of smoothness, flat surfaces, and organized stacking seen in the original robot footage is something that geologists find genuinely difficult to explain with a purely natural process. Nature is creative. Nature can make incredible structures. But nature typically doesn't produce smooth, flat, stacked blocks across a 2-square-kilometer area in patterns that look like streets and building footprints. Rewriting prehistoric human history. The old model of human prehistory looked like a neat timeline. Humans spread slowly across the world. Civilizations developed in river valleys, the Tigris and Euphrates, the Nile, the Indus, around 3000 to 5000 BC. The Americas were settled much later, and complex, organized societies capable of building monumental architecture appeared only a few thousand years ago at most. That neat timeline has been collapsing for decades. In Turkey, Göbekli Tepe, a complex of massive stone pillars arranged in circles, covered with sophisticated carvings of animals, has been dated to 9600 BC. That's 11,600 years ago. It is a monumental structure built by people who were not supposed to be capable of monumental construction. Göbekli Tepe forced archaeologists to completely rethink what humans were doing 12,000 years ago. In Indonesia, a structure called Gunung Padang has cores of rock that some researchers date to as far back as 20,000 years ago, though that claim is fiercely debated. Off the coast of India, in the Gulf of Kambat, structures were found underwater that some researchers link to early Indus Valley civilization, sitting beneath the sea because of post-Ice Age sea level rise. The pattern that's emerging, and this is where Cuba fits, is that a lot of the world's ancient coastlines are now underwater. After the last Ice Age ended, roughly 12,000 years ago, sea levels rose significantly as glaciers melted. Coastal settlements, the places where ancient peoples most often built, because coastlines provided food, trade routes, and resources, would have been swallowed by the rising ocean. They've been digging in inland deserts and river valleys. But the richest, most populated places in prehistory may be sitting on the continental shelves, covered by hundreds of feet of water. Cuba's underwater site may not be unique. It may be one of dozens or hundreds of submerged prehistoric sites scattered across the world's shallow seafloors. Most of them never surveyed, never photographed, never studied. Why this still hasn't been investigated properly? 25 years. That's how long those structures have been sitting at the bottom of the Caribbean Sea without a full scientific investigation. And the reasons why are a mix of politics, money, and something less charitable, institutional reluctance to confront findings that could overturn established narratives. Here's what a proper investigation would look like. First, you need a deep-sea research vessel equipped with a modern AUV capable of reaching 700 meters. Organizations like the Schmidt Ocean Institute, which operates the research vessel Falkor, or the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution, have exactly this kind of equipment. A full 3D sonar survey of the extended site, going beyond the original 2-square-kilometer area, would take days, not months. Second, an ROV with sample collection arms needs to bring up rock samples from specific points on the structures. Those samples go to a geology lab. Scientists can tell with modern analytical techniques whether stone has been quarried and shaped by humans or fractured naturally. Tool marks, cutting patterns, chemical traces of processing. These things leave evidence. Third, sediment cores from the surrounding seafloor can help establish when the area was last above sea level and what the environment was like at that time. This would directly address the timeline problem. None of this is technically impossible. None of it is even particularly exotic by the standards of modern marine science. What it requires is money, political will, and cooperation between Cuba, Canada, and international scientific institutions. The political landscape between Cuba and the West has thawed somewhat in the years since the discovery. The scientific and financial barriers, while real, are not insurmountable for an institution with the resources and motivation to try. The question is whether anyone is willing to ask the question loudly enough that the answer becomes impossible to ignore. What happens if it's real? The oldest known pyramid structures in the world right now are in Egypt. The Step Pyramid of Djoser, built around 2650 BC, about 4,600 years ago. If the Cuban structures date to 6,000 years ago, as Zalitsky suggested, or older, then the Americas had pyramid builders before Egypt did. That changes the story of who built the first complex civilizations. It changes our understanding of how quickly human societies can organize themselves into cities. It raises questions about whether these builders had connections to other cultures. The early Maya, the civilizations of Mexico, possibly cultures we haven't identified yet, and then there's the question of what happened to them. A city doesn't fall 650 meters to the bottom of the sea gradually. Something dramatic ended these people's world. A catastrophic geological event, an earthquake, a sudden fault collapse, a tsunami would have been devastating beyond imagination. An entire civilization wiped out in potentially hours, their cities swallowed whole, their story erased from human memory, except in the oral legends of their descendants. The Maya legend of the sunken island, the story of ancestors lost beneath the waves. Maybe those aren't myths at all. Maybe they're memories, passed down across 6,000 years of oral tradition, imperfectly but stubbornly preserved, until a sonar machine in 2001 accidentally confirmed that the place those stories described was real. What we actually know. At depths between 600 and 750 meters off Cuba's Guanahacaibes Peninsula lies one of the ocean's strangest discoveries. Massive stone formations sit beneath the surface in geometric and symmetrical patterns spread across a wide area. Geological evidence suggests the volcanic rocks at the site once existed above sea level. No complete explanation currently exists. Several questions remain unresolved. Whether the structures are natural or man-made, when they were formed, what forces created them, whether the extreme depth resulted from rising sea levels, land subsidence, or a combination of both. One fact stands clear. The site has never received the level of scientific investigation such a discovery deserves. Political tensions, financial limitations, and institutional hesitation have left one of the planet's potentially most important archaeological locations largely unexplored for more than 25 years. The newest scanning data has only intensified the mystery. The formations appear larger than originally mapped and far more complex than early sonar readings suggested. Evidence supporting a full-scale scientific expedition is now stronger than ever before. More than 71% of Earth's surface lies beneath the ocean, yet less of the seafloor has been mapped than the surface of Mars. The story of humanity's earliest civilizations may still rest hidden beneath drowned coastlines, submerged continental shelves, and the cold darkness of ancient flooded lands. Cuba's underwater pyramid is more than a mystery. It represents a doorway into the possibility that the accepted timeline of human civilization may be incomplete. The only remaining question is whether enough courage, curiosity, and funding exist to uncover the truth hidden beneath the sea. What lies beneath the waters off Cuba may be one of the greatest mysteries ever discovered. After 25 years of silence, the new scans have only deepened the questions and shaken what we thought we knew about ancient history. Was this truly a lost civilization buried beneath the sea, or something even stranger? Share your thoughts in the comments, and if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more unbelievable mysteries.